Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Cabinet of the 8th of August. We'll take apologies for absence first, and I know we've got apologies tonight from Councillor Harinder Marhill. I think everybody else is here. Are colleagues happy that I sign a record of the decisions of the previous Cabinet meeting? Thank you very much. Has anyone got any declarations of disclosable pecuniary interest or other significant interests? None of us are interesting. That is a good thing. Okay, that then moves us on to the first substantive item today. In Harinder's absence, I'll be moving the recommendations at 1.1 and 1.2. This is a really important policy coming forward, and it's important for a couple of reasons. Colleagues here and across Medway will be aware, of course, of Martin's Law in the aftermath of the Manchester Arena bombing. So it's really important that every event that we have happening here in Medway deals with the very latest legislation and make sure that we are as safe as we can practically be at any such event. So it's really welcome that we're bringing this policy forward. This makes sure that we have a standard and very transparent set of fees and charges. They're laid out in the appendices, but also importantly recognising that actually for the friends of groups who do so much important work here in Medway, that obviously there are exemptions as laid out again within the report. A number of councillors from across Medway would have received emails from residents who are supportive of the RSPCA. They have an ongoing campaign regarding the important issue of pets being prizes. That has never been particularly a policy here in Medway, but we've taken this opportunity tonight to listen to those residents and make sure very explicitly in this policy we say that is not acceptable for any event happening here in Medway. I know Harinder's worked closely with other members of the team, both here in the Cabinet, but also with the officers, to make sure this policy has got everything it needs to have, is transparent, and gives everybody who wants to run an event here, small, medium or large in Medway, and we are open for business, that they will know when they're dealing with the council what to expect. So I think it's a very good policy. I'm pleased to move the recommendations as laid out in paragraph 1.1 and 1.2. Open the floor to colleagues. Any questions? Yeah, Simon, please.
Thanks very much. Thank you very much for the report from the officers on this. This is a really valuable piece of work. What it does, I mean, if you get into the detail of it, it doesn't just provide sort of guidance on how to use our outdoor spaces, but it actually adds to their value as well, because within the context of this, particularly paragraph 6 on the pre-application assessments, there's advice and support for the groups wanting to use the green spaces, and that includes our friends groups, which is so important to us. It adds in about its objectives being beneficial to the local community and bringing about increased use of green space, which is one of our key policies from the election. So it adds value to the green spaces in a lot of ways. With regard to the fees and charges, very welcome that the friends groups and other community groups will not be charged. That's good to see. And even sort of some sort of the smaller groups will get reductions on the actual overall costs as well. However, going on to the environmental impact fee, a proportion of that will go to the management and support of the green spaces themselves. So overall, this is a very well done report, very well researched, and much appreciated. Thank you.
Any other member? No? Okay, then formally move the recommendations 1.1, 1.2. Are they agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much, colleagues. That moves us on to the next agenda item, which is Nashaba to move. Please, over to you.
Yes, thank you, Vince. So this agenda item is the renewal of the lease for Kingfisher Primary School for their nursery premises. It's a straightforward renewal of the lease where they've been on the site for some time now. The reason why it's been brought forward to Cabinet is because it meets a threshold of over £20,000. Given that we have some challenges with nursery provision across Medway at this point, I would highly recommend that we take this forward and allow them to renew the lease because they're providing an important service, and this is as far as I'm concerned, a straightforward renewal process.
Thank you very much, Nashaba. Obviously, there are blue papers. Hopefully, I don't think we'll need to stray into those tonight. Any colleague wish to comment on that? No, I think the point you make very powerfully around nursery provision, we've seen a number of nurseries across Medway closing their doors in recent times for a variety of reasons, and I think actually it's good to see a provision which is within a council premise. That's good to see and important to see, and I think absolutely the point you make around ensuring that we continue good provision of that nature where we can, obviously is essential. Unless there's anything else you wanted to add, and Sharp, at that point? Great, thank you. Therefore, colleagues, happy to agree to recommendations? Agreed. Thank you very much. That moves us on to item 6. Again, over to you, Nashaba.
Thank you. So this is a really important agenda item which looks at adding some flexibility to how we use the HRA account, giving us the ability to bid for properties and purchase sites quickly and easily within the HRA. So as colleagues will be aware, in terms of budget with the HRA, this was agreed at full council some time ago. However, what this paper is proposing is that going forward, rather than future HRA decisions constantly coming to Cabinet, that there is some flexibility for the portfolio holder and for the Director of Place to be able to take those decisions flexibly. So this just gives us a little bit more opportunity within the market to take decisions more flexibly, but I'm happy to take any questions if colleagues have them.
Thank you, Nashaba, very clear. Any questions from colleagues? I think that I'd add to this, actually. We had a good meeting this afternoon between Cabinet and CMT, and one of the things we were talking about there is the need for increasing speed in decision making and getting on with stuff, frankly. And I think this is a prime example where, again, yourself as a political lead along with officers can make those decisions quickly and effectively for the residents of Medway. So I really welcome this report coming forward.
Yeah, I just wanted to come back and say that obviously as an administration we've set out priorities around delivery of social housing, council housing, looking at temporary accommodation and really looking to address homelessness across Medway as well as many other challenges that we see in the housing sector, and this paper just gives us that flexibility and the ability to take those decisions a bit quicker and to do those things, you know, in the interest of Medway residents at speed. So I think this is a really sensible proposal and I would welcome Cabinet support for it.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, content to support the recommendations? Agreed. Thank you very much. That moves us on to item 7. Adam, over to you on the annual fostering report.
Thank you, Councillor Maple. Thank you, Councillor Maple. Just before I start, so I was really pleased a few weeks ago to be able to go on a visit, to actually visit an actual foster carer in Gillingham, and obviously to see the young baby in this circumstance, and it was a very humbling experience. I would appeal to anybody out there that is considering going into fostering to make themselves known, because we do need as many as possible. Unfortunately, we do lose a few through that retirement, etc., and all that. So we're always on the lookout for that. Councillor Maple, I'm pleased to introduce Medway Fostering Service Annual Report to the Cabinet this evening. Medway Council Fostering Service provides safe, regulated foster care placements for children in care and contributes to improving outcomes for the most vulnerable children. The key priority for the service is to ensure that all children who are in the care of Medway Council, whether the arrangement is short or long-term, are cared for in loving, secure and stable families. This report demonstrates the extensive work that was completed by the fostering service over the last year to ensure consistent and effective scrutiny of practice and the impact that this has for Medway's children. Fostering recruitment, as I alluded to earlier, remains the key priority across the fostering service for both foster carers and supported lodgings providers. There's been continued investment in marketing and advertising to support the recruitment of foster carers. And in the year just gone, 2022/2023, Medway Service received 125 inquiries, completed 24 home visits, and 21 applications were accepted, which equates to a conversion rate of 16.88%. The service approved 10 generic fostering households, 2 supported lodgings provider households, and 10 connected carers. In the year just gone, the service unfortunately lost 39 fostering households. Of these, 18 were generic fostering households and 21 were connected carers. Connected carers tend to stop fostering because they obtain a special guardianship order from the court for the children in their care, or because the child in their care turns 18. The loss of the generic fostering households is linked to carers resigning, as I alluded to earlier, because of concerns regarding maybe concerns regarding the standards of care that they offer to children, or maybe because they are retiring. A small number of carers moved to other providers. A total of 76 special guardianship assessments were requested in the year just gone, 2022/2023. The special guardianship orders allow children to live with family or friends carers, and given the carers the ability, and it gives the carers the ability to exercise parental responsibility for the children. From the total number of requests, 26 assessments had a positive outcome and 12 assessments were negative. 25 assessments stopped as the applicants withdrew from the assessment process. There were 13 assessments ongoing, and the outcomes will be known at a later stage. And it's always very important that those people going in for fostering really understand what they're going in for. And often the application process makes them realise fully what they are taking on. And sadly, it isn't always right for a number of people that apply. But it's absolutely right that we get foster carers who really want to do the job, because we are responsible for them as corporate parents, and they deserve the very best. The service remained committed to improve and innovate the way we support our carers to increase our recruitment and strengthen the retention of foster carers. And for the year 2023 to 2024, several activities are in progress or have already been completed. And these are as follows. Medway Fostering is scoping out a response to the central government's strategy, Stable Homes Built on Love, and is canvassing the best way to engage with other local authorities to establish a fostering cluster so that the Medway Fostering Service can access funding to support recruitment activities. And then another initiative, considering the challenges to recruiting and retaining foster carers, the Fostering Service refreshed the recruitment strategy and has planned several recruitment campaigns that promote fostering as a viable and rewarding career choice. The Fostering Service completed a review of the fostering fees, and I'm pleased to say that for the year commencing on the 1st of April 2023, the service uplifted the fees to bring them in line with the National Fostering Minimum Allowance. During 2023 to 2024, so the year ahead of us, the service will strengthen the retention activities and hold regular meetings between foster carers and the senior leadership team, which will add an important layer of oversight and guidance to the fostering service development. So, Councillor Maple, as per the recommendations of this paper, I ask Cabinet to approve this report and note the future developments the Medway Fostering Service has planned. And obviously, if there's any questions or contributions, I'll be pleased to hear them.
Thank you very much indeed, Adam. A detailed opening to this item. I've got Teresa, Tristan, and then Simon, and then Tracy.
Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, I don't think mine's working. Thank you, no problem. Thank you. Thank you for the report, Adam. It is a really important report, and we've all got our Foster for Medway with a Love Heart special drinking bottle tonight, and I think it's really important to have that positive image. I wanted to talk about Section 6 and the support that we give to special guardians, because I think that they can be, although not in this paper, I'm pleased to say, an overlooked group of carers. Very often, family carers find themselves in an emergency situation. I've got direct experience of this in my professional life, working in the justice sector, where if suddenly a parent has to go into prison, very often the first port of call are family carers, and they will, in my experience, try to maintain that position. The difference between them and other foster carers is that they don't get foster payments. And I think that's something that I would look to an incoming Labour government to think about, particularly as people often find that they have to give up their jobs to care for the children. They find themselves in financially constrained situations because they didn't expect the situation that has arisen to happen. And it's really important that we give this group of people as much support as possible, because it's well known that children will thrive more if they can stay in a family situation. I'm pleased that they've got a support group and that they can attend training. And I think certainly I'll be going along to see that support group, Adam, and giving them as much support as I can, because quite often when grandparents are put into a position where they really want to be a special guardianship carer, they've already got other caring responsibilities, perhaps for dependent adults in the family, and they find themselves caring for both ends of the family. So I'm pleased to see the emphasis that the paper has put on that particular group of people. I think we need to give them as much support as we possibly can. And I extend that, and my colleague Tracy will know this, you know, quite often they get left out of the loop sometimes by schools, because people don't realise that the caring situation has changed. Sometimes grandparents find themselves going along to early years activities and can feel a bit isolated and a bit different to other people. And yet the role that they're playing in keeping those children in a loving home with familiar characters is really important. So as much emphasis as we can, I would like to give that. And I think in the longer term, I would be looking for this group of people to be able to be better provided for, either through the benefit system or through some kind of payment system, because actually they take on the same responsibility as all of the good foster carers, but find themselves in more difficult financial circumstances as a result.
Thank you very much, Teresa. Tristan.
Thank you very much, Vince. And I'm also second the support for this item. Medway's fostering service mission is one of working together, and I think this report highlights some of the innovative approaches working with agencies and providing a safe and nurturing family-based therapeutic care service. And I think over the years we've seen numerous reports actually just documenting some of the successes that they've had, actually at a time of significant budget shortfalls and also contextual changes in national legislation as well. And we believe firmly that all children should enjoy a happy, healthy childhood, which promotes self-confidence and resilience. And in fact, part of child-friendly Medway, I think this is a pillar of that service that we seek to support and offer. And I think this report recognises that children's needs are best met by their family where it is safe to do so, and is committed to placing children who are not able to remain in their own family in an appropriate alternative family placement wherever possible. And of course, the priority will be for children to be placed with family or friends and supported under Regulation 24 of the care planning regulations where this placement is deemed suitable. So, you know, in many cases, the support that we offer is as an emergency, or it is as a requirement of legislation. So it's critical that we do get this correct. I would like to concur with my colleague, however, there needs to be further redress, I think, with the change of government around what happens after the age of 18. In particular, I notice in many senses they are deemed as adults, and the support for foster care is removed. And I think there needs to be some work undertaken around supporting these young adults as they're leaving the system to ensure that they are given educational support and further support going on. And I would recognise and hope going forward that a change in legislation would see that throughput of support from their foster service all the way through to a later age. And I think we have that obligation, I think, as well. So can I just re-emphasise the support for this? I think it's a very positive piece of work. There's a lot happening this year, and I congratulate Adam for picking up on all of the different aspects of the brief. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tris. Simon.
Yeah, thank you very much, Vincent. Thank you very much, Adam, and to the team who put this together. It's a really welcome report. I've just got a couple of issues. One is around the fostering service itself. Obviously, the emphasis is placed upon the recruitment of foster parents and families and such like. But obviously, there's some struggles here in paragraph 6.2, particularly about staffing. And I just wanted to sort of find out a bit more about what's happening there. It talks about the recruitment team, and that's been slowly replaced in terms of staff numbers, but there's problems with the generic fostering team, connected carers, and post-special guardianship team. How are we off with the recruitment in that, and is it happening, or is it really struggling at the moment? And it's a problem we have not just within that particular service, but across the council, where Medway does have a trouble recruiting staff, particularly into this area. And as a consequence, are we using agency staff, and is it costing us a lot more? So that's the question around that. And the other, just picking up on what Tristan was just saying about the post-care, obviously within my own ward in Luton, we've got the former Russell House, which will now be called the Sunrise Foyer, following the school contributing a new name to the place. But obviously we weren't happy with the location of that because of the the community there has got some real issues and putting vulnerable young people coming out of care there. So I was just wondering about how if there's any view on that. But obviously no solutions to that at the moment, but it's going ahead. We just wanted to raise that as an issue as well. Thanks very much, and I fully support the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. And Tracy.
Thank you. Simon, in fact, has just made the point I was going to make about recruitment team and the difficulty in retaining the staff there and the work they've done. But additionally, I just wanted to mention the increase in recruitment of foster carers from diverse backgrounds and how important that is, because we need to be reflecting the diverse children that we have who need these caring and supportive homes. So it's pleasing to see that there's an increase in recruitment of foster carers from diverse backgrounds mentioned in this report too.
Thank you very much. Any other colleague? If not, back to you, Adam.
Thank you, colleagues, for your contributions on this item. It goes to show how valued around this table, but also the community generally values the fostering service, and obviously those staff that support the fostering service as well. There is actually quite a lot in the reports which actually talks about the staffing situation, but I will ask whether there's any update at all and write to you and to other colleagues with the updated picture on that. Thank you, Councillor Cohen. Nothing further to add.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Adam. Thanks, colleagues, for your contributions. Is the recommendations agreed?
Agreed.
That then moves us on to the next item, which is the Medway Adult Education Annual Accountability Agreement. That has a lot of A's. Tracy, over to you.
Thank you. Medway Adult Education is required to submit an annual accountability agreement to the Department for Education as part of its annual grant agreement. The agreement is used by the DfE to assure the use of public funds. It's also a useful strategic document to share with partners and as a backdrop to strategic conversations with the Department for Education. In the Skills for Jobs White Paper, the government set out its vision to transform further education. This was followed by 2 funding and accountability consultations which described how the system will be reformed. The accountability agreement is a new product emerging from these reforms, and it's a 2-part document setting out the overall expectations of providers in return for the department's funding investment. The plan sets out in Section 3 how it meets its national, regional and local needs, and in Section 4 identifies the key stakeholders. Section 5 details the strategic aims, objectives and targets which interconnect with a number of other priorities for us in Medway, including employment, climate change and increased opportunities for young people post-16. The Department for Education required that the agreement must be signed and approved by Medway Adult Education's governing body, therefore it's a matter for Cabinet, and so Cabinet is recommended to consider and approve this accountability agreement to be submitted to the DfE.
Thank you very much indeed, Tracy. Teresa.
Thank you, Tracy, and thank you, Vince. And I'm really pleased to see the accountability report. I think that the Adult Education Service is consolidating and in a strong position to serve the needs of the adult population in Medway. I was particularly pleased going along with colleagues, including Councillor Edwards, to go to the Rochester Adult Education Centre Open Day, which was really well attended. They had people coming in and out all day long seeing what was on offer, and I was able to look at the some of the creative things that the students had made. I heard about the English and maths classes, which is a matter quite close to my heart, having worked in further and higher education for a long time, and really pleased to hear about some funding that they've managed to get for family literacy, which is critical at the moment. We've got, we were talking about this earlier, Tracy, regarding all the visits to schools that you've made. We've got a lot of children coming into primary school with speech and language difficulties, and in fact, at a school in my own ward, we heard that there is a real problem with family illiteracy, which means that families are not in a good position to help children read at home and get all of the pleasure and learning that comes from that. And I really think family literacy can make a difference. So I'm hoping that we can work together across the council to make sure that that offer is available right across the borough. And we need to think about the buildings that we've got, including some of the Shore Start buildings, which have been mothballed, to think about their wider use and how we can help the Adult Education Service deliver some of the things that they want to do as new initiatives.
Thank you. Simon?
Yeah, thank you very much, and thank you for the report, Tracy. Really welcome a lot of the work that's done by the Adult Education College, just put particular emphasis in relation to their work on climate change and how valuable that is, getting that message into the community. Because at the end of the day, and this is a big part of our climate change action plan, is that the council cannot save the planet. It has to be done in partnership and in sort of together with the community, and this is one of the best the ways that we can get this done. So it's most welcome. And equally, I like there's special emphasis been made on gardening and allotment use as well, which is very welcome. And I've met the staff who are involved in that, and they are very enthusiastic and working closely with our volunteer groups on our green space as well. So that's most welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other colleague? Adam?
Just to mention from a Gillingham point of view, I was pleased in about the last year, maybe 15 months ago, to go to the opening of the Gillingham centre there, which is at the back of Britain Farm Mall. And when I went along, it took me a little while just to find it because of the ongoing work that's been going on. Obviously, there's council housing being built near there, but there's a very clear sign when you enter it from like Jeffrey Street, opposite the taxi place, and going in there, I was obviously there's a lift and everything that takes you upstairs, but they've got really modern like facilities, access to like computers, and the kitchen like facilities were really first class. So I would urge anybody that hasn't yet gone along to the Gillingham Adult Education Centre to go and give it a try. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Adam. An invitation that sounds one too good to miss. If there's nobody else, back to you, Tracy.
So the Adult Education Accountability Agreement, as I say, needs to be submitted to the Department for Education as part of their funding agreement. So I would ask the Cabinet to recommend the agreement.
Thank you. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you, colleagues. That moves us on to item 9, Legal Services Structural Review and Budget Addition. Zoe, over to you.
Thank you. This report sets out the proposals for a restructure of legal services. The council currently seeks to be self-sufficient in those areas of law which are encountered frequently, such as childcare, and seeks external support for those areas which are more highly specialist and infrequently encountered. However, alongside that, the service has encountered huge difficulties in recruitment and retention, and is dangerously reliant on locum lawyers who come at a cost of twice as much or more as substantive staff. Also, because they're a movable feast, it gives rise to potentially inconsistent application of the law. So this proposal is to reorganise the services to aid retention and succession planning, and to put in place a structure that allows for movement of staff. Currently, we have had grade 7 lawyers supervising grade 7 lawyers, and that doesn't encourage people to remain in those posts. The cost of introducing the new scheme is in the region of 656,000 or 657,000, but we're currently experiencing an overspend in excess of 1 million because of the locum lawyers. The increase will incorporate in part the implementation of the med pay review, but provide a hierarchical structure for lawyers to move through the grade, with the introduction of a new grade 8. And it's hoped that that will create more opportunities, but encourage people to continue working substantively for Medway Council. So the current role, the current roles are changed from an assistant head of service and a head of service being responsible for supervising all of the staff. And now with the new structure, there are going to be 3 pods where there is a better system of managing the lawyers in the scheme. So I would recommend that we accept this report and accept the change in the structure.
Thank you very much, Zoe. Any member? Teresa?
Yeah, thank you, Zoe. And I think it is important to support this scheme. A lot of work has gone into it, and although we're in a very difficult situation with the budget, this is an investment to save money in the future, as you've quite rightly explained to us. And I think we can't underestimate how important having a strong legal service is. Very many of the activities of the council, like taking children into care, depend on us being properly represented at court by people who know our area and know the constraints and the opportunities and things that are on offer. And I think I would say to anybody watching Cabinet tonight, if you're thinking about becoming a lawyer or if you're recently qualifying, please consider us. There's a huge range of legal opportunities across councils that perhaps are not more widely known in the public, doing lots of different activities. It can be a very rewarding and enriching career. You know, from planning, as I say, to children's services, to all of the other things that we get involved in, we need good legal advice. So you can have a rich experience here, and under this new structure, I think, any lawyers coming in can be assured of getting good support and opportunities for advancement.
Thank you, Teresa. Any other colleague? Before I go back to you, Zoe, I mean, I think I've talked about a lot about our kind of unofficial 6th pledge, which was reducing the number of temporary staff that we had in this organisation. Now, they're there for a lot of reasons, and we probably won't ever get to the point where we have 0 temporary staff. If we need a very bespoke someone for a short period of time, we'll bring him or her in for that period of time. But in too many cases, we've been using consultants and locums as the norm. And actually, in some cases, that's not just us as a council, that's local government as a whole. And I think there'll be conversations needed at a ministerial level to try and make some progress on some of those other areas in local government for us as an upper tier authority. But in this particular area, as Teresa rightfully says, the risk to us as an organisation of a temporary legal expert leaving before the case gets heard, we know that's happened. We know that's happened, and actually this process puts us in a much more safe position of that less likely happening, and therefore for that reason alone it's certainly worth bringing forward the recommendations. But actually it is about making sure that this becomes a good place to work, and for this particular set of workers, having someone who's your manager on the same grade, that's not inspiring. That's not about career progression. So this is one step. There'll be others. I'm sure we'll see similar reports over the next few months of a similar nature. But the level, on May the 4th, the level of temporary staff in this organisation was unacceptable. And more importantly than that, the cost to taxpayers because of the level of temporary staff was unacceptable. That isn't something we can change overnight. That's not something we can change in 100 days. But that is something which we take seriously. And the default has to be, why can't we fill this post substantively? And that might mean sometimes restructures and look at how we do things in a different way. And I know you personally, Zoe, have taken an interest in this, working closely with the head of legal and others on this matter. So I'm very supportive of this, and I suspect we'll see similar reports coming through for other parts of the council. Back to you, Zoe.
Yes, thank you, Vince. I think it's important to flag up that there is still an overspend as a consequence of this, but it's a smaller overspend than it would otherwise have been. And because the forecast overspend with with the current structure would have been in excess of £1 million. And also, there's a big question about consistency of advice from locum lawyers who may not stay, or, as I understand it, many of whom don't even operate out of Medway, they operate remotely. So it causes potentially inconsistent application of the law, as the report says. And there is a real danger and reliance of locum lawyers. So I'd propose that this motion is supported.
Thank you very much. Recommendations laid out. Are those agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. That then moves us on to the next agenda item, which is the Q1, or round one, Q1 revenue budget monitoring. Falls to me to move. And look, this is not a report any of us would want to be receiving. But the reality is this is where we are after 13 years of our revenue support grant going down by 91%. This is where we are as a result of having, in the case we've just heard from Zoe, expensive consultants and locums in place where actually spend to save restructures could have made a positive impact. So we're starting that work now. This will mean some difficult decisions. There's no doubt of that. We know that collectively as a cabinet. We've said that collectively, that we will not shirk away from the difficult decisions. And I know that the corporate management team are already working hard to try and bring forward in kind of cooperation and collaboration with cabinet members urgent actions to take us back to a level of spending we need to be at. But it's worth saying as well that we won't be alone in having reports of this nature, particularly as an upper tier authority. And we do need a new deal from central government. There'll be an election next year, we highly anticipate. Whoever wins next year, they've got to give local government, whatever colour the rosette nationally or locally, we need a better deal for Medway residents. Because ultimately at the moment, where we find ourselves, and I know people will point at history and go, actually, Q1, round one monitoring, well, it's always a massive overspend, isn't it? But actually, the reality is that will just come down. Well, that's not the reality. And we know that because actually, if you look at recent years, you know, balancing the books on more than £10 million worth of reserves, the state that it was left when we took over, we can't do that. There aren't £11 million worth of reserves left, even if we wanted to do that. So that we will, and the report is clear on paragraph 5.1, where the current overspends are. I'm clear we need to have a balanced budget. That might mean spending in a different way, as we've seen, you know, with staffing levels changing from temporary to permanent staff, which has a short-term hit but a long-term save. We've heard at this cabinet meeting previously ideas around invest to save, which will need some upfront spending but give us those longer-term, both better results for us financially, but importantly, better results for us as a community here in Medway. So that work has already started. It will continue. Obviously, we will monitor it closely as we move forward. From my perspective, this is not a report we wanted to bring forward. This is not a report that any cabinet in their first 100 days would want to be bringing forward. But we've said publicly again and again, when we will need to take the hard decisions, we'll do that. And as we move forward, I suspect because there aren't the level of reserves that this council previously had, those decisions will come sooner rather than later. I'll pause at that point to see if any colleagues wish to make any initial contributions. Thank you, Teresa.
I mean, thank you, Vince, and I think it's important to put on record thanks to all of the officers who have had to wrestle with the effects of austerity over the last 13 years. In my own area, adult social care, £15 million has been taken out in the last 5 years, so it's not very surprising that everybody working hard to look after the most vulnerable people in our community are having to face an overspend every year. And I think we need to wear other people's shoes for a minute when we talk about things like this. You're trying to deliver the best services you can, that are statutory services that we have to deliver for the most vulnerable people in our community. at the same time as trying to save money. That is a very tough call. And I think for largely very caring people who want to do a good job for the citizens of Medway, they are extremely difficult decisions that have to be made. And we don't want to have a situation where people just keep nibbling around the edges, trying to get the lines on the budget right every time they're asked to save money. We're taking a much longer look at things. We're looking at what investments we can make to save money in the longer term. And as Vince says, we're looking to everybody round the table to think about where sensible efficiencies can be made and where we can do things differently. It isn't helped by projects in the past being allowed to run out of control, such as splashes. We have to do that. We want people to have a new swimming pool, but it's a pity that the spiralling costs were not taken into account before the election and held back on a bit. Similarly, we've heard with Nashaba, the repairs we've had to agree to the Brook Theatre, a key part of our regeneration, had to be agreed because of an inadequate appraisal of what needed to be done before the levelling up funding was applied for. So we've made it clear to officers, we've got their back. We want them to be able to take decisions. We want them to be able to be honest and transparent with us. And we're going to work on some of this unwelcome legacy and future tough decisions to make together. But I'm clear where the blame lays. Local government has been starved of funding, and we're here trying to make the best of a difficult situation.
Thank you very much, Teresa. Any other colleague? Tristan.
Thank you very much, Vince. And this item is very important. I've sat in and observed these quarterly reports now for many years. And in some senses, the quarter one report is always, as you say, is always the worst. However, we cannot allow ourselves to end up in the same situation as what happened last year, when a complacent attitude where these reports would always fix themselves ended up with a £10 million drawdown and reserve raid binge from the previous administration. We cannot afford that to happen again, because we're at dangerous levels when it comes to the reserves that we've inherited. And that is a legacy which I'm afraid they need, our predecessors need to accept some responsibility for and some culpability for. And I hope that they do reflect in the mirror when they wake up and reflect on their behaviours and their conduct around that and what they've left. But importantly, we're not in isolation. If we look at council upon council around the country, we can see they're looking at similar challenges, and there has to be a longer-term solution to local government finance. And with the change, hopefully, in government coming forward, there will be a respect for local government. I noticed Mr Sunak has said that he would rather funding were taken away from deprived urban areas. He said that in Kent last year. And in fact, what we need actually is a complete tilt on that head, and money needs to go back into areas of social deprivation, because ultimately a penny wise and pound foolish decisions means a longer term liability and cost. And we can see that in previous decision making that has occurred in this council. On a second point, we absolutely need to be good custodians with the public purse, respecting, of course, our manifesto commitments. A weekly bin collection is ring-fenced, and we will maintain that, as is our commitment to Medway residents. Maintaining our lowest council tax levels is really important. We gave that pledge to our residents, and we established that when we took in the first Labour administration in this council 20 years ago, and it's something we are proud of and will continue to deliver our residents. But beyond that, we also need to look at different types and ways of solutions. And I'm just going to point to the digital agenda, Medway 2.0. Again, it's a very exciting programme which can see costs potentially removed and an improvement in service. So there are opportunities as well as negatives with some of these aspects. And I just want to pay tribute to Phil and his transformation team, who are right now probably bean counting and doing what they do in the background to try and, probably not with beans, but in the background are trying to work out ways, innovative solutions to try and deliver public services in a different way. And I can say there is a real commitment and drive to deliver on some of that agenda, because ultimately we need to be fit for purpose, but being leaner doesn't mean that we can't be better. And in some cases we can deliver on that too. So I just want to stress this is a bleak report. We absolutely need to take our obligations seriously to ensure that we're in a better position. However, there are opportunities we can take going forward, and you know, the public trusted us in May to deliver, and we have to deliver a balanced budget. We have to deliver a council that is sustainable, and we will do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Tristan. Colleague, any other contribution on this item? Obviously, we'll be coming back for the next 3 quarters subsequently. Obviously, there's 3 recommendations in there. Let me just pick up on the points that Teresa and Tristan rightfully said. Look, I think it's very easy for any administration to fall into the trap to be thinking about the next 4 years and that's it. We won't be doing that. Some of the things from a spend to save perspective, by the very nature of them, will take that time to both embed and then, you know, absolutely get us to the financial position we need to be. We'll continue to lobby central government. We'll lobby our MPs, whoever they are, over the next 3.5 years. I hope they change. That will be up to the electorate of Medway. But whoever they are, I want them to be champions for Medway and actually getting us the money that we need, not welcoming us losing £170 million. So look, we will continue to work hard on this. As Tris rightfully says, the transformation team have been leading some of this key work, but actually this is everyone's financial situation. So the 10 of us as the Cabinet, the 59 of us as elected members, it's Medway councils, the hard-working officers and the people of Medway. But as Tris rightfully says, we've been trusted to deliver change. We will deliver change, and part of that change will be the financial responsibility to make sure we deliver that balanced budget when we get to the end of this year, and importantly, build a balanced budget for next year without some of the assumptions perhaps we've seen in the past. So therefore, happy to move the 3 recommendations at the start of the report. Colleagues agree to those?
Agreed.
Thank you. I'm afraid it's me again. So this is moving on to the other side of the budget. Of course, this is the capital part. This is, as Teresa made mention in the previous item, a situation where we are inheriting quite a lot of programmes, but in particular, it's worth referencing, of course, page 176 and the situation we find ourselves with HIF. And we can see there in broad terms of £149 million, which will no longer be on the capital budget moving forward from obviously round 2 as we see it there. It's a very difficult situation that we've had to deal with. I'm pleased we've been able to manage to secure the differential. There was about 3 million differential. So I was pleased that we were able to secure that. We'll be bringing a formal report to the next Cabinet meeting, and I'm grateful for officers and members who attended a very well attended briefing on Friday on that specific issue. Good questions, good answers, transparency, which is what this administration will deliver. So on the capital budget, you'll see it is there. As an administration, we will be looking at the capital programme to ensure we're getting value for money, to make sure that, you know, when it comes to the programmes that are in place, are they delivering to the priority of the people of Medway with that financial backdrop. Also worth pointing out that we are taking a change to the members' priority scheme. Colleagues will recall that at the February budget meeting, we had some alternative proposals to the fund as it was at the time. That figure is not the figure we had at the budget, so we will just have to reflect and review what we looked to bring forward in February. That will be different now, and after the decision today, we'll take that away, and that will be dealt with under delegated decision making, because all of the sums of money there are relatively low key. So, colleagues, any questions on the Q1 capital programme report, please? No? Members happy to agree to 4 recommendations as laid out then? Thank you. That then leads us on to the final item tonight, which is the council plan. I mentioned earlier on that we had I think a successful meeting this afternoon between the corporate management team and the Cabinet, working collaboratively, looking at what the council plan of the future may look like. But we don't have that on the agenda today. That meeting was less than 8 hours ago, so we're at the start of that process. But it's worth saying that actually we're already working towards what a future Labour and cooperative administration's plan for One Medway would look like. But of course, we're dealing with the existing plan that's in place now. So you'll see here there are a number, I won't go through them all, but there are a number of different indicators that colleagues may wish to speak to in particular. I draw colleagues' attention to page 202, where there's some changes being proposed on freezing technology tonight. Brilliant. Who's in charge of IT? Paragraph 4.2 to 4.5, some changes there, again, recognising in particular the disappointing news around HIF, but also the sense checking and positive audits that we've had on business continuity and emergency planning. That's been put into place and being used today with continuity planning around obviously the emergency stuff that's happening in Wayfield, and we know officers are in close location with Kent Fire and Rescue and the police there, so thanks for what officers will be doing there today. And there's a proposal to add 2 further pretty straightforward and following on the conversation we've already had tonight, additional risks to the risk register around children's social care budget and the school conditions surveys. So happy to move the recommendations as laid out. Any colleagues, any questions, queries, comments? Take Teresa, please.
Yes, I mean, obviously I welcome looking at this plan and particularly the discussion that we had today. And I think it's important to remind ourselves that we have got an opportunity to refresh the plan. We have got an opportunity to look again at the priorities as we did this afternoon, and to think about the way that we measure the progress that we make, so that we've got a clearer view of whether or not things that actually are in our plan are happening, and if they're not happening, we can take actions to make sure that they do. So I'm looking forward to the refreshed plan, because one of the characteristics of this plan is that the things that are red have been red for ages. The things that are green have stayed green. Actually, the plan should be more dynamic than that and more reflective of what's actually happening out in the community. And the reason that it isn't, I think, is because some of the priorities are out of step with the way that things are moving in our community, the changes that we've been talking about this evening, some of the impact of the budget, the extreme scrutiny of our statutory obligations. And I think when we come forward with the refresh plan, we will see a document that is actually more reflective of what we want to happen in the community. And I hope that we will have better grip on whether or not the things that we've agreed as priorities actually are taking place, and put ourselves in a stronger position to take action when we need to.
Thank you, Teresa. Any other colleague? No. Therefore, move the recommendations as laid out in the paper. Are those agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you very much. That closes tonight's Cabinet meeting. Thank you very much indeed, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thanks for that short adjournment while we sorted out the electronic wonders of paper. It's great going paperless, but the papers aren't always in front of you electronically. So we have got an additional late report on the issue of who. We spoke about this earlier on tonight, and therefore we're moving this. There's 3 recommendations. I think we'll be taking that forward tonight. And I think, Simon, you will lead off on this for us.
Yep, sure. Thank you, Vince.
You.
Just to really, so we've been across this ground quite a lot. We had a meeting on Friday afternoon with a number of the members, of our own members were there, plus opposition members and members from the Who Peninsula and beyond. And I think it was a very amicable meeting. In the end, a general agreement that we'd done the best we could, bearing in mind the circumstances that we'd been faced with, having the money withdrawn. And I think the consensus feel that I got, certainly from the meeting, was that we now need to look to the future. And this is primarily what this report's about. It's just putting a line under the situation regarding the HIF funding and the loss of that funding. And I think it noted in the previous report that the HIF has now been taken off the risk register because it's no longer a risk, but there is a risk that has to be reviewed regarding how we take forward developments around who. So that's being revisited in terms of its risk. And I think the big risk involved there is all about infrastructure and how we take that forward. And that's really the recommendation number 3 there, which is all about Reg 18, Reg 19 of the local plan, which will be coming forward in the next couple of months, the Reg 18 report. And that's really in relation to how we consult with the communities, engage with them as much as we possibly can to discuss housing and the local plan in general, but all the HIF infrastructure, and that will be built now into the local plan going forward. How we then pay for the infrastructure is the challenge that we face, and that's something to be debated and discussed over the coming months. I think that's probably everything that needs to be said. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Simon. I've got Teresa.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Simon. And I think it's important to place on the record our thanks to you, Vince, and to the Chief Executive, Richard Hicks, and other people for the work that you did in trying to change the government's mind when this money was taken away. Trying to make direct contact with ministers, none of whom replied to you, trying to make contact with Michael Gove, putting Medway's case to anyone who would listen, and unfortunately not being successful, and fundamentally being told that our failure to have a local plan in place under the last administration was the main reason for withdrawing that £170 million, which would have made a huge difference to all of the plans that we've got for Medway. But undeterred, as you say, Simon, we want to still make the improvements that the HIF would have bought, and work's going on now to think about how we do that, which is, I think that shows commitment to everybody. But it's a lesson for all of us. When we get these large sums of money in, we've got to make sure that we can show the actions necessary to put the money to good use. And although I think this was a very late withdrawal after a huge amount of work, the lack of the local plan was paramount, and we've got to put all of our efforts into making sure that we get that local plan in place so that when the time comes, there are opportunities for more funding, we can avail ourselves of them. But I don't want everyone in Medway to feel discouraged by this, because we're still ambitious. We still want everyone to have good facilities, good connectivity, and there's no sense in which we're going to throw our hands up in despair and stop doing the things that we're doing. We're putting a lot of effort into making sure that officers can deliver a local plan, and making sure that we keep the community up to date with what we're doing. And I thank everybody that was involved in the briefing on Friday. I attended that. It did a very good job of busting ridiculous conspiratorial myths about what might have happened to the money and what happened to the plan. Everything was on the table. Everybody who wanted to could see the correspondence between us and central government and all of the things that had gone before. And I hope that that is a fair place to start in what is a new environment for us and a new environment for everybody. And it was a very good job done in getting back the £3.2 million that have been spent on doing this work, so that at least we can put that to good use on the council.
Thank you very much, Teresa. Any other colleague before I go back to Simon? Look, I think firstly, again, I would echo the comments around Friday's briefing. I've watched it back, so yes, I do need to get a life. But no, there were some really important questions asked and some very strong answers given. I'm grateful for that for both colleagues who joined in person and online. It was good to hear that conversation happening. As Teresa rightfully says, putting the information on the table that not everybody's had access to everything at all points over the last half a decade plus as this project has run. So I think that was a helpful process, and one which certainly, hopefully all members have walked away from that feeling more informed. But for the public at large, let's be really clear. This administration, yes, deeply disappointed by that decision, but we are more determined than ever to make sure that we deliver that local plan, because it's what our residents deserve. So we will be bringing that forward, as Simon says. We'll be bringing that forward to a cabinet meeting over the next couple of months to start that process again. I'd encourage every resident out there to share their views. I think we've got a good track record, less than 80 days in, of saying actually when we have consultation, we listen. I think that's something which I believe every resident in Medway who's engaged with us so far will see. And look, we want this local plan to be Medway's local plan, but we've got to get on and deliver it. So we will have to, if there are conflicting views, it will be down to us as the administration to bring forward a set of proposals to take forward accordingly. So yes, it's desperately disappointing we found ourselves in this situation. And as Teresa says, I pay tribute to the Chief Executive, Richard Hicks, and the officers involved in a number of very quite intense quick-fire meetings to try and do the best we could, literally from day number one of this administration. From the Thursday onwards, this was very high on our agenda. So the 3 recommendations are clear, and I'll certainly be supporting those. Simon, back to you.
Yeah, thanks very much. Thank you, Teresa, as well, for your comments. And I just add my thanks as well to Richard and to the team of staff. And don't forget that this work goes back to 2017, and a huge amount of time and effort and energy by officers was put in. And that work has not gone in vain, because there are a number of projects which are still live, if you like, coming out of that, in particular in relation to the SEMS, the Strategic Environmental Management Schemes, the Cockham Community Parkland, the Who Wetlands Reserve, and equally the proposal to have a community parkland at Deangate as well. All those schemes are now live. 2 of them have planning permission. The Deangate one will be coming forward in due course for planning as well. And at some point in the future, when the money is available, we will be pursuing and taking those schemes ahead. So there will certainly be a huge amount of environmental benefits for the communities out there. If nothing else comes out of this at the moment, that's certainly in the pipeline. And also the other things like the road schemes and the rail schemes that were designed and planned and carefully thought out, and a lot of consultation with landowners went on over the whole period of time. All that work is still available to us and still usable as we take the consultation for the local plan forward. So there's a lot of work that is of great benefit to things as we go forward. So a big thank you to the staff for all that. And just looking forward to how we then take things forward. So I put forward the recommendations as laid down in the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Simon. Those are agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you very much, everybody. That definitely concludes tonight's meeting. Thank you very much.